Welcome to our latest strategic deep dive. It is so great to have you joining us today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Before we get into the thick of it, I have a quick favor to ask you.
Yeah.
If you want to keep getting these detailed breakdowns and, join our growing community of learners, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and leave a comment down below with your thoughts as we go. It really helps support the show and lets us know what you want to see more of.
It really does make a huge difference for us.
Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are analyzing a really comprehensive military intelligence report focused entirely on the Zaporizhzhia front.
Right.
Now, for the longest time, Moscow's military planners have boasted that this specific region was an impregnable southern fortress. It was supposed to be the ultimate unbreakable defensive line.
That was the official narrative, yeah.
But the source material we're looking at today claims that the reality on the ground has flipped completely. It paints a picture of a chaotic collapse, describing a scene straight out of the darkest theaters of modern conflict. It is honestly amazing to read just how rapidly the dynamics have supposedly shifted.
It is definitely a striking read. But before we get into the weeds, I want to set a quick boundary for you, the listener.
Good idea.
The language in these intelligence briefings is intense and, well, it's often heavily biased toward the side writing them. Our job today isn't to pick sides or endorse these geopolitical claims.
Exactly.
We are maintaining a critical analytical distance. We are just putting the data under a microscope to see what the authors are alleging from a purely tactical perspective, so you can understand the mechanics of what is happening on the ground.
Exactly. We're just looking at the mechanics of what is on the page.
Yeah.
The scale of what is on this page is just mind-blowing.
It really is.
Honestly, based on my data, we're talking about more than 50 major tactical clashes occurring every single day within this specific oblast alone. And for those who might not be familiar with the term, an oblast is essentially just a province or a state.
Right, a regional district.
Yeah. In this one province, it is a volatile environment where mechanized units are engaging each other nonstop.
It's relentless. You have to visualize what 50 clashes a day actually looks like.
Wow.
The report describes a battlefield where unmanned aerial vehicles are completely dictating the tempo. They are constantly buzzing overhead, either running targeted reconnaissance or operating in lethal attack modes.
Just everywhere.
And simultaneously, long-range missile platforms and heavy artillery units are firing without pause. The text literally says they are turning the sky gray.
And underneath that gray sky, you have these main battle tanks and armored personnel carriers burning through enormous amounts of fuel and ammunition across the sprawling Zaporizhzhia steppes.
The sheer volume of munitions and mechanical movement described there is staggering. The report claims that in just a span of a few weeks, this critical strategic region has been transformed into a sprawling pile of structural rubble for the occupying Russian army.
Yeah.
The Kremlin's elite armored brigades formations that looked invincible on theoretical planning papers are purportedly being buried under the debris of their own shattered defensive lines.
Which is just wild to think about.
According to the text, this has forced forward forces into rapid retreats, leaving behind millions of dollars worth of advanced military equipment stuck right in the mud, while frontline commanders frantically try to move their missile batteries and command centers outside a 400-kilometer operational danger zone.
Which brings us to the catalyst for this logistical panic. The source details a fierce, coordinated Ukrainian counterattack that was rapidly launched over the course of just 72 hours.
A very tight window.
Very tight. This was described as a complex ambush operation that totally caught the Russian intelligence apparatus off guard. It happened exactly at the critical geographical junction where the Dnipropetrovsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Donetsk regions all directly intersect.
A vital crossroads.
Right. And in that incredibly short window, they successfully recaptured a remarkably large territorial area, directly liberating exactly 8 distinct settlements. It sparked a wave of strategic panic at the highest echelons.
What's fascinating here is the demographic reality surrounding that specific 72-hour window.
Okay, lay it out for us.
If we apply a critical lens to the numbers provided in the report, which cites detailed intelligence published by the Institute for the Study of War, there are currently between 50,000 and 70,000 active-duty Russian soldiers stationed in and directly around the Zaporizhzhia sector.
That is a massive force.
It is. So an analytical mind must ask, how exactly does a heavily armed standing army of that massive size get practically forced into surrendering critical lands and executing one of their largest tactical retreats in recent history?
Yeah, you don't just push back 70,000 entrenched troops with a standard frontal assault.
Wait, that's exactly what I was wondering. How is that physically possible? What did they actually do differently?
The report introduces a major tactical shift. It all began with the deployment of Ukraine's elite Artan unit.
The special operas.
Yes. The source is clear that this was no ordinary textbook infantry assault. Instead of running headfirst into the trenches, they systematically dismantled Russia's static positional defense tactic. The operators of the Artan unit didn't just recapture physical trench positions, they actively crippled the primary communication and command nodes in the area.
Okay, that makes more sense. So they weren't just fighting the guys in the trenches, they were blinding the people giving the orders.
Precisely. The report highlights a clash near Stepnohursk to illustrate this. At first, the frontline commanders mistakenly thought they could hold the defensive line simply by throwing thousands of poorly trained, conscripted troops into a tactical dead end.
Just a meat grinder approach.
Yeah, exactly. But the specialized Ukrainian forces methodically bypassed the brute force of those conscripts. Instead of fighting wave after wave of infantry, they focused on the support structures. Dozens of soldiers manning the communication posts were reportedly neutralized before they even understood what was happening.
Wow.
The Artan unit then effectively turned the captured buildings and deep trench networks into localized firing line.
That is a very sophisticated maneuver.
The primary commander of this complex operation, Viktor Tokutuk, who goes by the call sign Titan, stated that the critical component of the entire operation was, quote, surgically cutting off the enemy's logistical arteries.
And that changes everything.
It really does. That calculated maneuver instantly reduced the combat effectiveness of the forward assault units to zero. It's kind of like how quickly a highly organized corporate office completely falls apart when the coffee delivery trucks stop running.
Huh, right.
Except, with heavily armed battalions. Once the supplies stop, the entire defense network crumbles instantly, like a fragile house of cards.
That is a very apt, if slightly less explosive analogy. Systematically cutting off a military's logistical arteries leaves even the largest army completely helpless.
Exactly.
If you have a tank but no fuel, you just have an expensive metal box. And according to the text, it was this precise operational moment that allowed the military to advance kilometers deep into the heart of the occupied region.
Right.
But as the report notes, that sweeping tactical victory with the Artan units was actually only the tip of a much larger strategic iceberg on this volatile front line.
That systemic breakdown is just staggering. Before we look at the, honestly, sci-fi tactics Ukraine used to exploit that breakdown, I just want to quickly remind you that if you're finding this deep dive fascinating, please don't forget to like the video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel.
Yes, please do.
We love hearing your perspectives on these complex topics. Okay, so moving into the second phase of the analysis. My data shows a huge spike in Russian artillery usage in a very specific area, but it wasn't against infantry. What exactly was Operation Samurai?
This is where the report reads more like a science fiction novel than a military brief. Operation Samurai was executed by the 3rd Assault Brigade, which the text notes continues the legacy of the Azov movement.
Right.
And what they deployed directly onto the active battlefield were autonomous kamikaze ground robots.
Autonomous ground robots? You mean they were just sending little RC cars strapped with explosives across the mud?
Essentially, yes. The visual description provided in the text is surreal. The kinetic operation began with the sudden appearance of these lethal little machines creeping across the mud, and they surprisingly resembled nothing more than ordinary civilian robot vacuum cleaners.
Like a Roomba.
Basically a weaponized Roomba. You have these ground robot operators sitting miles away in a secure operations room identifying and acquiring targets, while the machines do the physical advancing entirely without human risk.
Weaponized vacuum cleaners, that is wild. And the Russian response to these cheap little rolling robots was absolutely staggering.
Disproportionate, really.
The forward forces frantically attempted to neutralize them, desperately deploying heavy conventional ammunition. I want to read the exact list of what was officially reported as being expended just to stop these tiny targets.
All for it.
They used at least 4 FPV attack drones, they called in 7 separate airstrikes, and they commanded 6 entire heavy artillery batteries to fire on them. 6 entire batteries for machines that cost a few $1,000s each.
This is a textbook example of extreme asymmetric warfare.
Break that down for us.
For those listening who might not use that term every day, asymmetric warfare is essentially when two sides have vastly different resources or tactics, and the smaller force uses unconventional means to exploit the larger force's weaknesses.
Okay, makes sense.
The financial asymmetry here is profound. You have millions of dollars of heavy ammo being wasted on robots worth practically nothing in military terms. And what was the definitive result? The unmanned ground robots still successfully reached their designated target coordinates and systematically blew up critical ammunition depots.
The destruction of those depots had to send severe financial shockwaves straight into their war budget.
Oh, absolutely.
But beyond the money, What is the psychological impact of something like this? The report notes a chilling message from the NC-13 unit behind this operation. Quote, "We will find your positions, and you will not even have a single bullet left."
That quote really gets to the heart of the psychological warfare at play. It fundamentally changes the calculus of modern combat because there is simply no longer a safe rear echelon.
Right.
Imagine the sheer dread of being a forward soldier in a fortified position. You are sitting in the dark, and you know that relentless, silent machines programmed solely to detonate on contact are creeping through the mud right toward you.
I can't even fathom it. Exploding ammunition behind you, weaponized drones circling above you, and lethal automated robots advancing in front of you.
Exactly. They deliberately forced the occupying soldiers to experience total tactical isolation. And when you combine that immense psychological damage with the physical casualties, the local command structure faces a complete operational nightmare.
Speaking of physical casualty, the mathematical statistics shared in this text are grim.
Very grim.
The report presents a catastrophic loss table, claiming an average of 26,000 Russian soldiers are being eliminated every single month. It states that total losses across all fronts are now rapidly approaching the staggering figure of 1 million personnel.
A truly massive number.
The text contrasts this with a proud announcement from Russian Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev, who claimed the recruitment of 422,000 entirely new soldiers.
Right, a huge recruitment drive.
But the brutal reality of the Zaporizhzhia front, according to the report, is that these newly deployed reserves consist entirely of untrained, poorly equipped conscript units being sent to fill the gaps.
Here again, we have to maintain our critical distance. These numbers are undeniably massive and represent the specific intelligence perspective of the source.
Good point.
However, even viewing these figures strictly as an operational assessment, they highlight a fatal systemic doctrinal flaw. The text argues that the military doctrine being utilized still heavily relies on costly human wave attacks based almost entirely on outdated World War II tactical logic.
Can you break that down a bit? What does a human wave attack look like in a modern context?
A human wave attack is exactly what it sounds like. It's the strategy of overwhelming the enemy with sheer numbers of infantry, pushing forward in waves, accepting that the first few lines will be wiped out just to exhaust the defender's ammunition.
Just brutal.
It is. That worked in the 1940s when battlefield visibility was low and communication was slow. But when you deploy raw, untrained soldiers using mid-20th century logic against a highly transparent battlefield in the year 2026, the results are catastrophic.
Because they can see everything now.
We are talking about a battlefield saturated with high-speed fiber optic cabled FPV drones.
FPV drones, those are the first-person view ones, right? Where the pilot wears goggles and flies it like a video game?
Yeah. Exactly. But what is crucial here is the mention of fiber optic cables.
Okay, how does that change things?
Older drones relied on radio signals, which meant the defending army could use electronic jammers to block the signal and crash the drone. But these new FPV drones spool out a literal physical wire, a fiber optic cable as they fly.
Wow, a physical wire trailing behind it.
You cannot jam a physical wire. So you have human waves running across open fields, being watched by drones that cannot be jammed, and targeted with absolute precision. Those human waves are quickly reduced to nothing more than grim mathematical statistics.
And it isn't just a doctrinal failure. The report heavily details a complete chaotic breakdown in basic operations. Among the primary reasons for the swift defeat in this sector are severe systemic communication failures,
which is a death knell for any army.
The text cites detailed data from the Institute for the Study of War confirming that frequent Starlink network outages were happening at the exact same time as Russia's own bizarre internal ban on using telegram channels for military coordination.
This is a vital point to unpack. Think about the operational paralysis that created. Early in the conflict, many of Russia's secure, encrypted military radios failed or were easily intercepted.
Right.
So out of sheer desperation, entire units started using civilian apps like Telegram to coordinate artillery strikes and troop movements. It became an absolute crutch.
So when the top brass suddenly bans Telegram, they're essentially taking away their own army's primary means of talking to each other.
Yes. It completely and utterly severed critical communication lines on the actual ground.
That's insane.
Trying to coordinate a modern army that literally cannot receive updated orders from its superiors or even know the exact physical location of the Allied unit sitting right next to it in the trench is a nightmare. It is akin to trying to conduct a complex symphony while completely deaf.
I like that analogy.
You have all the instruments, but zero harmony or direction. The text notes that on a contested front where mechanized units are struggling to advance a mere 70 meters in a single day, the opposing forces are aggressively recapturing entire kilometers of territory in one single coordinated move, entirely because they masterfully turned this widespread communication chaos into a lethal work of operational art.
The logistical trap this creates on the ground is just brutal. The report details the plight of elements of the 58th Army stationed in Zaporizhzhia. Because of a systemic lack of functional military equipment, they're reportedly sending completely unprotected civilian transport trucks to the front lines instead of proper armored vehicles.
Imagine being an infantryman ordered to drive a civilian delivery truck, something you'd see dropping off groceries right up to the zero line of contact.
The zero line.
The zero line is the absolute furthest edge of the front where the two armies are directly looking at each other. It is a death sentence in an unprotected.
And the forward ammunition stocks are so severely depleted that their heavy artillery batteries can no longer reliably reach the advancing lines. Officers on the ground are broadcasting their complete operational helplessness over easily intercepted, unencrypted internal radio communications.
Because they have no other choice.
Right. They are openly stating that their basic ammunition is running out and absolutely no reinforcements are coming.
And this unchecked logistical collapse turns every remaining settlement along that zero line into a lethal trap. The source gives a very specific example regarding the settlement of Turnoff.
Let's talk about Turnoff.
During this counteroffensive, the entrenched 69th Protection Brigade reportedly suffered a complete, devastating defeat against the highly mobile elements of Ukraine's 425th Assault Regiment. Independent observers visually confirm that total control of this specific village is entirely back in Ukrainian hands.
So why does Turnoff matter so much in the grand scheme of things?
The tactical implication here is massive. Taking Turnoff fundamentally means that the primary logistical supply route heading straight toward Mariupol is now resting in severe immediate danger. Mariupol is a critical hub. If that supply route is cut, the logistical bleeding we talked about earlier becomes a full-blown hemorrhage for the occupying forces.
So what does this all mean? The local clashes are intense, with territorial gains measured in a few bloody meters, while personnel losses are documented at the entire battalion level. But the report asks us to take a step back and look at the broader implications.
Yes, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the delicate global balances of power are actively being affected by this specific tactical situation.
Okay.
The text emphasizes that defense planners at the Pentagon and the broader command structure of NATO are monitoring these rapid territorial gains with extreme focused interest. While many Western analysts view this as a totally unexpected operational success, frontline commanders see it as the inevitable result of meticulous planning.
They saw it coming.
The report makes a very bold, declarative statement. It says, these 400 kilometers in Zaporizhzhia are the exact geographic location where the long-standing myth of global military invincibility was permanently buried in the mud.
That is a powerful claim.
And to compound that crisis on the ground, the text asserts that the Russian Air Force is also completely and rapidly losing its long-held dominance in the contested skies above the battlefield.
It is an incredibly dense, intense report, and we've unpacked a lot of complex tactical movements today. From the 72-hour spark to weaponized vacuum cleaners, it is a lot to take in.
A lot of ground covered.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive and exploring this data with us. Just one final friendly reminder, if you appreciated this analysis and want to keep learning with us, please hit that subscribe button on the channel, like the video, and drop a comment to support the show. It really does mean the world to us.
And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a summary question based on the realities outlined in this. When cheap autonomous ground robots can dismantle millions of dollars of heavy artillery and simple digital communication bands leave entire mechanized armies completely blind, we have to ask, are we witnessing the end of traditional human-centric warfare altogether? Something for you to think about until next